Andy Johnson. Today we're looking at an approach to reading instruction called a literature-based approach. And it's simply a matter of using children's books, great children's books, as the basis for reading instruction instead of those very expensive basal manuals in which the stories generally are mush. Now there's two basic approaches. The whole class can read the same book, or you could have students be put into small groups and create book clubs where each group reads the same book. You're limited only by your imagination here, of course. In a literature-based approach, you create your own post-reading activities. You do not need to rely on someone outside your classroom who does not know you or your students. You have all these sorts of activities that you can use: creative writing, thinking, art, drama, etc., etc. And as teachers, we have our toolboxes full of pedagogical strategies. And if you've read my other books or other videos, you know that there are hundreds and hundreds of good pedagogical strategies that you can use. The goal of the post-reading activity is for students to interact with the ideas that they encounter in the book and to interact with each other, social interaction. This is why we have post-reading activities, not to see if they've read the book. It enables the class to become the book, to have a whole class discussion around the book. When you are reading Stuart Little, the class becomes Stuart Little. And you can even create Stuart Little or mouse experiments, or mouse, or study mice or rodents in science. You see how it becomes the curriculum. You can create related lessons in social studies, health, science, math, etc., etc. It becomes the curriculum. Now, when you're using literature-based, what you usually want to do in your daily lesson is create some sort of advanced organizer to prepare students to read. And all these things here are examples of advanced organizers. An advanced organizer is a graphic organizer put in advance of a lesson or a story. You can also use story previews, which are not technically an advanced organizer. Well, I guess they could be. Yep. Here's a story map that could be used as an advanced organizer. You want to create some sort of reading schedule for when you're going to read each chapter of the book. If you're reading a common book, generally classes you read one chapter a day. So when you're selecting a book for a literature-based approach, you want to find a book in which one chapter can be read in a day or in a reading class. What about students who get done early and do you let them read ahead? Well, of course, you decide. I always hate to put limits on literacy, so I tend to allow them to read ahead in the story. You know, some teachers say, stop after chapter 8, don't read ahead. Well, that's a matter of personal taste and how you design your instruction. But what then do you do if a student finishes early and you don't want that student to read ahead? Well, you could have other books by the same author for them to read, other books on the same subject or genre, or simply read other books. All things, because reading is good. What about low ability readers? If you have a multi-level classroom, and by the way, all classrooms are multi-level. There's no such thing as a homogeneous group of students. You can have chapters on tape, use that outline or advanced organizer so they get a sense of the structure. Chapter synopsis allow the students to get as much as he or she can. And remember, the purpose of reading narrative text is to enjoy the story. So you do whatever you can to enable that student to enjoy the story. Now, instead of those very expensive workbooks, use a reading log or a journal. 89 cents at Walmart. Buy a notebook and use it for aesthetic responses. They're responding to the story, or as a journal for class discussion. What interesting and important things did you discover? Discussion groups. Class discussion can occur in a group or in large group. Here's an example of a dialogue journal, by the way. And I like using these. This is where the student responds and then the teacher responds to a response. So it creates a dialogue. That's one way to use a journal. Or a reading log, I like students to have a log in the front or back of their notebook. Simply have the story and what they're reading. Adopt and adapt. Double journal entry. This is for older students. This is another idea for using journals. They record something that actually happened in the text and then their ideas on one side. The activities used with your reading log or journal, you are limited only by your imagination. The benefits, of course, it's real authentic reading like we do in the real world, costs much less than basal books and manuals. And instead of spending that money on basal books and manuals, you can have actually really good books that students want to read. And it gives you flexibility in terms of book, genre, and subject areas. You know what books your students enjoy, not the basal manual. They don't know what books your students enjoy. And the stories are generally much more interesting than those found in basals. Now, what about all those so very important skills in the scope and sequence chart or on the list of Common Core state standards? Well, they're not all that important, but you can still teach them. You can have mini lessons, including lots of reading practice to actually use and apply those skills. And you can teach and have them use them in journals in learning logs. For example, if I was teaching the short A, I would have students describe about a time when they were mad. So I'm seeing their use of that in a journal or a reading log. And by the way, you can still use worksheets. That doesn't mean you can't use them. When I use worksheets, I like to tear them out and have two students work on a worksheet together. The purpose is for it to be a learning tool. The conversation that takes place enhances learning. So how do you organize this? Well, first you find a good book, and if you enjoy it, chances are students will enjoy it. You read the book, and then you create activities to go with each chapter ahead. And again, the activities are to manipulate, extend, or experience the chapter ideas in some way. Decide on the approach that you're going to use for reading and the reading schedule. And then you may need to differentiate for high and low ability readers. Now, you can use this across the curriculum. Yes, in science and social studies. First, you find a good book, you read it, and you record ideas related to the content area, science, social studies, or health. For example, reading Hatchet, there's a lot of good ideas about the environment and science and such thing, all right? You need to do a little research, get some information, create an outline, and develop the content that you want to teach that goes with each chapter. And then you create activities and assignments for each chapter and you link to the standards. Yes, this takes a little more work up front, but once you create this, you have this to use for several years. And actually, when students are interested and enjoy it, it's actually much less work in the long run. It takes a little more work up front, but the rewards are great and students actually like it. Teachers' number one job is helping children fall in love with books. After that, much of reading instruction takes care of itself. Literature-based approach to reading instruction.